Imagine a woman who wore poverty like a cloak, not because she was truly poor, but because pity became her currency. This is the story of Jane, a Nigerian woman who fled to France, and how her carefully crafted disguise of hardship brought shame not only to herself, but also to her entire family. Jane's story began long before she ever stepped into Europe. Back in Nigeria, her husband Michael had once been the pride of his town. Tall, dark, and strikingly handsome, educated, polished, and for years a successful businessman. People admired him. Women prayed for a husband like him. But when his company collapsed, Michael lost everything. With his last savings, he left for the United States, determined to rebuild for his family. For nearly 2 years, there was silence. Then, parcels began to arrive. Boxes filled with clothes, electronics, and money. His message was simple. Jane, sell these. Feed the children. Keep the home alive. But Jane told another story. To her neighbors, she wept. Michael abandoned me. It has been years. No papers, no help. At church, she sat in tattered wrappers, head bowed, until people pressed envelopes into her hand. In the markets, she bargained loudly, dressed in rags, making sure others overheard her complaints of suffering. And people believed her. A widow, struggling herself, sometimes paid Jane's children's school fees. Neighbors brought food. Relatives gave what little they had. Her 3 children eventually finished university. Yet Jane never abandoned her performance. She still wore faded wrappers. She still whispered about abandonment. She still played the role of a crushed woman. But what no one knew was that Jane was not simply surviving. She was saving. Every coin, every handout, every sale of Michael's goods was quietly sent home, funding a mansion in her village that rose brick by brick behind the mask of her misery. Meanwhile, Michael tried multiple times to bring Jane to the US. 3 petitions, perhaps 4, all denied. Exhausted, he finally told her, "Stay in Nigeria, care for the children, forget about abroad." But Jane had her own plans. She secured a visa to France. When the time came to return, she refused. Instead, she applied for asylum. Her story was airtight. Abandoned wife, children left behind, no support. Immigration believed her. France gave her a small apartment, food vouchers, and a refugee stipend. To most, this was survival. To Jane, it was her stage. She went to church in Salvation Army coats 3 sizes too big, worn-out shoes, frayed scarves. She wept softly in pews until kind strangers pressed coins and notes into her hands. At community parties, while others dressed in their finest, Jane appeared in faded gowns, whispering tales of suffering. In the shelter, she told volunteers she was jobless and desperate, while in truth, she worked as a cleaner, quietly earning 2,100 euros a month. When asked, she simply said, "I volunteer." Most of her salary was wired back to Nigeria. The mansion walls grew higher, the gates gleamed, the tiles shone, all while Jane walked Paris streets like a beggar queen. But every act, no matter how polished, eventually unravels. One evening, while resting in the living room of the French couple who had sheltered her, people who had fed her, given her a room rent-free, and even sent money for her starving children, Jane let her mask slip. Tired, distracted, she sighed and muttered, This 2,100 euros isn't even enough to save." The room froze. 2,100? From what job? The couple's faces twisted in shock. Jane stuttered, tried to cover her words, but it was too late. In that moment, the truth ripped through the illusion. Their pity had been manipulated, their kindness exploited. Anger replaced compassion. Doors that once opened with love now slammed shut. And soon the whispers spread. She is not poor. She has been lying. Still, Jane thought she could outrun the truth. She wore more rags, cried harder, begged louder. But then came the fatal blow. On Facebook, her children posted photos. A glittering Nigerian mansion, marble tiles shining, golden gates wide open. The caption read, "Mom's housewarming party. Our queen deserves this." The internet does not forget. Screenshots spread like wildfire. The same Jane who begged in Paris, who wore Salvation Army coats and wept in churches, was the Jane behind a palace back home. Neighbors gasped. Church members shook their heads. The story was no longer whispered. It was exposed. When Michael and the children finally joined Jane in France, their arrival should have been a time of joy. The children, graduates and professionals, walked proudly through the airport. Michael, tall and commanding, stepped beside them, ready to reunite with his wife. But instead of honor, they met shame. Neighbors pulled Michael aside. "Is this your wife? The one who begged in churches? The one who said you abandoned her?" Michael's face darkened. After years of sacrifice in the US, sending money and goods, he had been painted as the villain in Jane's tale of pity. At home, confrontation erupted. Michael thundered, "After all I did? After all I sent? You told them I left you?" Jane bowed her head. Words failed her. Her children sat in silence, shame burning on their faces. And everywhere they went, people whispered, "Those are the children of that woman, the one who fooled us all." Jane's mansion stood tall in Nigeria, but her reputation lay in ruins. The same community that once pitied her now turned their backs. Friends distanced themselves. Churches avoided her. Neighbors whispered whenever her children walked by. The family could not bear the weight of the shame. Within the Nigerian community in France, Michael's pride was shattered. The whispers, the pointing fingers, the constant reminder that his name had been dragged through the mud were too heavy to carry. Broken in spirit, he decided to return to the United States. The children, ashamed of the scandal, collected their residency permits and quickly moved to another city, desperate to start afresh where no one knew their mother's story. And so, the dream of finally living together under one roof as a family ended in pieces. Jane was left alone in France, surrounded by the very walls of deceit she had built for herself. All her efforts to maintain an image of suffering had destroyed the very thing she claimed to protect, her family's honor. She thought pity was power, but in the end, pity became her prison. Because no lie can live forever, and sometimes, the shame left behind is heavier than the hardship we pretend to carry. We have come to the end of our story. Please subscribe and follow us for more interesting stories. Thank you for watching. Till next time, bye.